So we are studying this text. So I'm trying to express the way we can understand our problem. You see, the physically blind is one thing, but mentally blind is totally another. So when we are mentally blind, we first create imaginary problems and we want to solve them. So there is no solution of imaginary problems. Most of us, we try to solve the imaginary problems created by the mind. So when we say mentally blind, we are not at all clear about the goal of life. It is like we are driving home and we see a shop, we stay there. We said, okay, let us grab a cup of tea and a coffee. So we go inside the store and we buy something that is not at all required. We start eating something. So this is, I'm explaining about the mentally blind through a physical way. So when the goal of life is not clear, then there are always chances that this mind keeps wandering. There is a forgetfulness, there is a sense of laziness, and there is a sense of obsession that pops up in the mind. So mentally blind means first thing that we are not clear about the goal of life. Second thing in mentally blind is that we are not clear who we are. I'm husband or a wife, son or a daughter or a professional. We are not at all clear that who we are. Because it is the mind must be clear who we are so that we think, we speak and we act in the same direction. Don't you know that I'm your husband? You know why you have been doing like this? It means we do not know who we are. Same way about wife or son, daughter. Son was studying a book. I told you before that how to take care of the kids. He was hardly 12-year-old, and father saw that. Why the hell you are so reading this book? No, I want to see how you have been working on me. So it is something mentally blind. Third point of mentally blind, that we work with the wrong notions, wrong thinking, wrong actions. We'll understand how we constantly work with the wrong notion. So when we work with the wrong notion, the mind gets always upset. It is always tired, fatigue. That includes a wrong perception about who am I, what is the world, what is the existence. Not possible to live in peace and happiness when we are mentally blind. So in mental blindness, mind is obsessed with seeking happiness and peace from others in the world. They are always looking. You wake up in the morning, you see that when they get obsessed, when that blindness reaches at the peak, we have heard that The people start drinking the moment they wake up and until they retire to the bed. They have been complaining of the members of their family. They have been complaining against the society or the nation. I'm not aware. I do not know who am I, what I'm doing. Mentally blindness. That is a very dangerous situation. In that situation, we always suffer. We end our life in suffering. Goal is not clear, first. Second, not clear that who am I? Third, I live with the wrong notion, wrong perception. All the three creates an imaginary problems in my life. One of the most greatest blunder that we do when we are mentally blind, the mind is obsessed with the things outside, claiming they are the goals of life. They are the goals of life. What it means? Wealth is the goal of life. But goal of life is peace and happiness. So wealth is a means. We never think about it. We never think in this way. It is also a sign of mental blindness. Pleasure. Seeking pleasure from outside is a goal of life. Not possible. Not possible. Pick up any object. You eat pasta for 10 days, the amount of the pleasure goes on decreasing, and the time comes, the mind says, I hate pasta. This is the mistake we always do. And searching for peace and happiness, which is not possible. So, what happens in the mind? This mind starts thinking, speaking, and acting what the person likes and what is pleasant for them. So means that mind, what the mind likes and what is pleasant for it does not remain forever. You see that one is simple example that I'm living with a spouse. Now I am not happy with the spouse. So what happens? I see the goal of my happiness now lives in another person. So I want to get rid of the present. I want to secure my peace and happiness from the other. Same time. So mind is in conflict. So we are always trying to find the solution of imaginary problems outside in the world. That is what the mentally blindness is. Mentally blind person craves for others, seeks others, projects happiness outside, feels insecure all the time, wants security from others, including wealth or person or home, etc. It's a kind of an identity crisis. We start suffering from identity crisis. The goals is not clear. The means and the ways are not clear. The master says here that think of it. Do you have a choice of peace and happiness with or without the world? That peace and happiness is within me It has to be without the world, and there the meditation starts. It has to be without the world. But because the mind has already created millions of the thoughts, it is still in the blind mood. It is still projecting pleasure and peace and happiness outside. That is the reason the mind sometimes lives in grief, then gets out of the grief, then lives in pleasure, gets out of the pleasure, constantly searching outside. That makes the mind wandering, that makes the mind obsessed, that keeps the mind in a crazy mode. The master says we are constantly listening from a different perspective. We try to understand these principles and try to apply life while thinking, speaking, and acting. Gradually, progressively, this mind gets out of the blindness. See, example, I like you, you are with me. Example, you do what I say to you. I relate you for my pleasure. Because you are with me, you do what I say to you. Is it imaginary? I have started creating an imaginary problem. Because my liking is based on receiving the pleasure from you, but the pleasure is not in you, not outside. So my mind creates those imaginary problems. No, I don't see there is any point of living with you. Why? Because I cannot find the happiness with you. But happiness is not there. My expectation in relationship is the problem. And that expectation is a projection by the mind. And that projection comes from seeking what I like. That cannot be done by anyone in the world. It is not real, it is imaginary. It is a sense of emotional dependence. So, first thing, when we understand that my mind has created the imaginary problem and it wants an imaginary solution outside in the world, this mind is mentally blind. No chance of getting out of the problem. So here the master says we need to constantly contemplate and think. Simple thinking. Do I love peace? Yes, I love peace. I love peace. It comes from within. It means peace is my essential nature. Do I like unhappiness? No. Unhappiness is not my nature. Do I love insecurity? No. So insecurity is not my nature. So I have to work on removing unhappiness rather than securing peace and happiness from outside. We need a clarity, and this mind has to be guided by the intellect with this knowledge. The intellect should live with this knowledge that peace and happiness, because I love it, so it is within me. Now, where lies the problem? Imaginary problem that I'm searching peace and happiness outside. Why? Because I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy because of The object and the person is not with me, projecting peace and happiness. So the permanent solution is to remove that unhappiness, to remove that insecurity from my mind. You can give millions of examples. I have a wonderful young guy who is in his 30s, very smart, well built physically. I give lessons every week to him privately. He has a tremendous sense of insecurity, fear, and anxiety, duality, and a conflict. So I asked him that, are you a millionaire? Yes, I am. Do you have a wonderful house? Yes. As far as the physical needs are concerned, can you live comfortably even if you do not work? Yes. Where is the insecurity? Why you have the anxiety? Why you have the anxiety? I feel I'm very close to my parents, and if something happens to my parents, I said, can you stop them if something happens? So I imagine if something happens to me. If one 80-year-old guy approached to my master and he said, I have a fear of death. My master told him that I can tell you with a guarantee that you will die one day. Get out of this insecurity. That much I can guarantee. He has been very straightforward, very blunt. That guy started looking, I have come to you for getting out of the insecurity and the fear. I said, once the mind leaves this imaginary issue, imaginary thought that I have a fear of it, one day I have to die. One day everyone has to die. So we don't approach to solve the imaginary problem with a permanent solution. We try a different approach and then we have a problem. Our goal should be to just remove the unhappy sense of unhappiness, imaginary problem, sense of insecurity, imaginary problem. Now, sense of insecurity, I'm not talking at the physical level. We all have for physical survival, we all have our means to have a food and shelter and the clothes, and we have all those closed circuit, you know, cameras outside and inside the house, so those sense of security is already there. I'm not talking of physical. Mental insecurity is created through an imagination. Then we want to find the solution of these imaginary problems by self-medication. Self-medication. Self-medication that yes, I am living in conflict in relationship with you. So hence, if I leave you, I find another, I will be happy. No, I cannot be happy. Because the same attitude, same projection in my mind is present. Then I resort to drugs, I resort to loneliness. I say I'm a failure in my life, I have a guilt in me. All these are imaginary. I'm mentally blind. I have a lot of frustration. In spite of the fact that I have more wealth, I tried many partners. I have tried changing homes. I try to live in luxuries and the comfort, and still my mind constantly lives in discomfort. So again, this master concludes that there is always a sense of incompleteness in me. Sense of incompleteness in me is causing all these feelings, false feeling of I should have a security if I live with a particular person here, then I will have all the challenges met. Sense of that incompleteness is the final experience of mentally blind. So, in that sense of completeness, there is another problem that arises, which creates a conflict in the mind because of the opposing experiences of profit and loss, likes and dislikes, pain and pleasure, victory and defeat. Animal mind do not have this problem. I have told you before, the cows eat grass happy. Cows looks at the tiger who is eating flesh. No, I'm not going there. We have a problem of competition, of jealousy, of likes and dislikes. Tiger eats flesh, is happy. The goats and the lamb, they said, okay, whatever you do, it's your problem. That's why we are not happy with one food item. We start searching, we get crazy over food. Simple, one example. I have a 13-year-old girl. She was she does a session for 2 hours every week. Very forthright. She has been with me for the last almost now 1.5 years. So her parents told me that you have to give her the life-changing lessons and those principles. He heard me talking somewhere, so she is very much aware in these 1.5 years. I said, "What happened? Can you tell me what happened last week? If there is any event that caused you mentally upset, and did you able to find the imaginary problem?" And she was forthright. She said, "No, we all went to the mall and we went to the store and I saw a beautiful dress I wanted to buy. I insisted, my dad refused it, so I got upset. But when I came home, I remembered what you told me. Oh, it's an imaginary problem." Oh, I asked myself that why I insisted. Oh, I insisted because I like. So what I like and what is pleasant to me gives me happiness is mentally blind. He came forth with today in the morning session. And she said, when I started thinking in that way, my mind became very light. I was very happy. So I asked her, how's your everyday is passing now after 1.5 years? She expressed, I'm always in tune with the sense of calmness and there is a peace. So she is the second out of the four siblings. The boy is older, and then she is, and then she has another brother and a sister younger. So I said, what happens when when they want to fight with you? They insist on something. So over the years, she said, nothing happens. I'm very clear about myself. When they insist on playing something with me and I see I have an opportunity to play, I play. Otherwise, I say goodbye. If they want to if they get hesitated, I leave that room. That that means that mentally blindness has to be removed. I have not to insist on this. I have not to insist on this. So there is a permanent solution for an imaginary problem in the Eastern wisdom. That is what our master says. Why it is an imaginary problem? It is everything is happening in the mind. In terms of my thoughts, ideas, feeling, projection. You are responsible for my suffering. If you behave like this, then I will be happy. Then it's better to buy a robot. Why to live with a living being? We don't understand this. We get blind. No, you never did this. I told you a couple of times. So whether it is a husband, son, daughter, relationship, friends, even including the friends. Why? Sense of incompleteness. Why is that sense of incompleteness? Mind is projecting outside, it is not looking inside. But whenever with that sense of incompleteness and expectation from the world, I bring the mind inside, I feel the hollowness completely in the mind. And that hollowness keeps me haunting. That is the problem. So this text, and he is known as the originator of this entire Eastern wisdom. His name is Krishna. We are understanding Gita. So I will go to the next chapter now from the next week. So his student had the same mentally blindness. And that text was almost written for about more than, I think, 3,000 years ago. I'm a man of modern psychology, so when I studied closely the select verses, I realized that master is explaining about majority of the psychological problems and their symptoms. 3,000 years, when we did not have a modern psychology. So we use the word in Sanskrit as a vishad, imaginary problem, unhappiness, dissatisfaction, sense of incompleteness. First, it lives in the mind. Then we have a feeling of sinking down, to be exhausted, to despair, feeling of discouragement. We have a pain and the suffering in the body. We have an idea of a grief, despondency, sadness. I'm terrified by the world. I'm terrified by the world. I want to divorce. I want to get rid of it. I do not feel like understanding the problem. All kinds of symptoms are explained. Think of this. The moment you have these mental challenges in you, it is only because of the mental blindness. The first step is to think. Find out what is the goal of life, how I have created these imaginary problems. Let us start our practice now. Eyes are closed.